Outside my window is a tree.
Hello, and welcome to The Bard's Truth with your host, the Green Bard. This is Lemongate 7. Ashara Dayne is not nailed to the floor. In this episode, we'll discuss Ashara's movements and motivations before and during Robert's Rebellion and solidify the theory that she is Septa Lemore. Thus far in the series, we've covered that George R. R. Martin switched the location of the house with the red door to the likely false location of Braavos, from Tyrosh, where Illyrio Mopatis sabotaged Dany and Viserys' lives there in a plot against them, the Martells, and against Tyrosh. I've explained how I think the 4 loyal men who, with Willem Darry, rescued Dany and Viserys from Dragonstone were a third conspiracy, including the Kingsguard from the Tower of Joy and Ned Stark. In our last episodes, we've discussed a few more accessories to this conspiracy: Maester Wally's Flowers, aka Halden Halfmaester, and Ashara Dayne, aka Septa Lemore. Last episode in our discussion of Ashara Dayne, I covered why I think she's still alive, her reasons for faking her death, and what is driving her today, as well as some tinfoil from the fandom about her new identity. I ultimately concluded that Septa Lemore is indeed Ashara Dayne, mostly based upon the fact that she's paired with Halden Halfmaester, who is quite obviously Wally's Flowers, the former Winterfell Maester who must have been sent to Essos by Ned Stark. To support that, let's return to the So Spake Martin I started last episode with.
Ashara Dayne was not nailed to the floor in Starfall. They have horses in Dorne too, you know, and boats, though not many of their own. As a matter of fact, a tiny tidbit from A Storm of Swords. She was one of Princess Aelia's lady companions in King's Landing in the first few years after Aelia married Rhaegar.
That's from George R. R. Martin's Correspondence with a Fan in July 11, 1999. I think this is a subtle clue about her location at the time, aboard the Rhoynish, not quite Dornish, pole boat, the Shy Maid, as Septa Lemore. Note that at that point, he was starting to write Feast Dance, so some of the plot was already forming in his head, one would assume. To check this assumption for a moment, let's pretend we don't already know who Lemore is and ask, who could she be? That she must have a secret identity is set up in Tyrion's POV.
Lemore had changed out of her Septa's robes into a garb more befitting the wife or daughter of a prosperous merchant. Tyrion watched her closely. He had sniffed out the truth beneath the dyed blue hair of Griff, and young Griff easily enough. And Yendra and Ysilla seemed to be no more than they claimed to be, whilst Duck was somewhat less.
Note that Tyrion completely forgets to wonder about Halden's identity. To quote Preston, the POV is always wrong.
Lemore, though, who is she really? Why is she here? Not for gold, I'd judge. What is this prince to her? Was she ever a true Septa?
George is asking us to be intrigued by her and to speculate who she might be. Fan theories have suggested she is Ashara, or Lyanna Stark, Wenda the White Fawn of the Kingswood Brotherhood, Mellario of Norvos, Doran Martell's wife, Melora Hightower, or Tyene Sand's mother. I eliminate Lyanna off the back. She's dead, that's clear. Let's look at what we know about Lemore to try to eliminate some of the remaining contenders. First, she's posing as a Septa. This is very little information. Any literate woman could educate herself in the faith. It being the main reason Tyene's mom is listed, though, I count that as one point in her favor. Jon Con thinks of her as Lady Lemore. This is the best clue we have to narrow down Lemore's identity. She's a highborn lady. This is a point in favor of it being Ashara, but I'll grant points to Melora or Mellario, and a point against Tyene's mother and Wenda the White Fawn. She is more handsome than pretty, and quite arousing to Tyrion. She also is playful with Tyrion. Credit the Order of the Green Hand with influencing me on this. Using the archaic definition of handsome, this suggests she is very good-looking and also healthy and strong. Handsome is less likely to be used to describe a woman who is petite or delicate. Given that George R. R. Martin contrasts it with being pretty, I think it unlikely that Lemore is a petite woman. This is a point for Ashara and Melora, neutral for Mellario because we know little of her appearance, and negative for Tyene's mother due to Tyene's description, and for the White Fawn, who's described as young and fair. She has given birth. Because of the stretch marks, this points strongly to Ashara, but I grant points to all the other known mothers. And then one exclusive piece of evidence I find as an audiobook reader. Lemore sounds like the French l'amour, meaning love, but directly translating to the love. And faire l'amour means to make love. Names are very important to George R. Martin, as we all know, so I think that this is a strong pointer to Ashara. This name means Lemore is alternatively an object of strong affection and a sex symbol, which is clear in Tyrion's impression of her. Ashara gets a big plus, being the mysterious love we've been seated with over 4 volumes. This is also a minus for Tyenne's mother and Wenda. Here are some arguments against each. Wenda's score is weak, and there is no connection between the Kingswood Brotherhood and the Golden Company. The former is small folk and reminiscent of the stories of the Wildlings and the Brotherhood without banners in the contemporary storyline. The latter is a bunch of malcontent elites. It makes no sense to the story for George R. R. Martin to place her on the Shy Maid in a conspiracy with the Golden Company. Melora, we've already established that Haldon is her son, yet we see no affection between the two. I think this eliminates her. Besides, Haldon is the only Hightower/Citadel spy needed in the party, and we hear in Sam's POV that Melora is actually in the Hightower. Mellario, Doran sent Andre Dalt to serve her in Norvos, so I think that's a good indication that she truly is in Norvos. Doran also doesn't need another spy in the party, already having Yandri and Ysilla. Mellario's name, possibly meaning honey, Mel, or unfortunate, Mellario, has nothing to do with love. And then finally, Tyenne's mother's score is weak, and as I said, neither the Old Town Conspiracy nor the Dornish Conspiracy needs a second spy, so I eliminate her for the same reasons as Mellario and Melora. That leaves us Ashara, with the top score. First, let's dispel the argument that Lemore can't be Ashara because Ashara's haunting violet eyes are not noted by our POVs who have seen Lemore. My counter is that George R. R. Martin is clearly setting up a mystery with Lemore's identity. If she is Ashara, stating her eye color would ruin the mystery. Every reader would know her to be Ashara on the first read. Leaving this detail out is not bad writing, it's the only way for there to even be a mystery with Ashara as a candidate. If that logic isn't convincing to you, I won't argue it further. Ashara's name is based on Ashara, a Semitic fertility and mother goddess, and means fortunate, noble, or blessed. And Lemore is certainly presented as a fertility goddess. Tyrion even uses a godly metaphor directly.
I liked to watch the sun come up as well. It was like watching a maiden rising naked from her bath. Some might be prettier than others, but everyone was full of promise. The turtles have their charms, I will allow. Nothing delights me so much as the sight of a nice pair of shapely shells. Septa Lemore laughed. Like everyone else aboard the Shy Maid, she had her secrets. She was welcome to them. I do not want to know her, I only want to fuck her. She knew it too, as she hung her Septa's crystal about her neck to nestle in the cleft between her breasts. She teased him with a smile.
And then later, of course, she says to Aegon that he's not the only one who must needs hide, so clearly she has a secret identity. The turtle shell breast comparison is metaphor and symbolism for her being godly because a turtle god of the Rhoyne, the old man of the river, is spotted in that same chapter.
A turtle, said Tyrion, a turtle bigger than this boat. It was him, cried Yandri, the old man of the river. And why not, Tyrion grinned. Gods and wonders always appear to attend the birth of kings.
The birth of kings, eh? That's a good segue to my final argument that Lemore is Ashara. While I've argued that the other candidates really have no business being on the Shy Maid, Ashara, for the same reasons that she would have joined the 4 loyal men in rescuing Dany and Viserys, would also be a willing, even eager participant in the Aegon conspiracy. Like Jon Con, Ashara is known to be a supporter of Rhaegar Targaryen. The two of them were even seen together at Harrenhal dancing, serving his cause from the beginning.
The Crannog men saw a maid with laughing purple eyes dance with a white sword, a red snake, the Lord of Griffins, and lastly with the Quiet Wolf, but only after the Wild Wolf spoke to her on behalf of a brother too shy to leave his bench.
If they both believe that young Griff really is the son of Rhaegar, they would definitely be on board with supporting him. And I think that's exactly what happened. In contrast to Haldon, Yandri, and Ysilla, these two aren't spies serving a different cause. Ashara and Jonkan would be dedicated to Aegon's cause because they were devotees to Rhaegar's cause. Ultimately, that is why I think Lemore is Ashara. Let's recall the song that Darian sings in the Cat of the Canals chapter, which hints that she was truly devoted to him.
As he sang about some stupid lady throwing herself off some stupid tower because her stupid prince was dead. The lady should go kill the ones who killed her prince.
That's just one more piece of evidence that Ashara was devoted to Rhaegar's cause. The fandom theorizes that Rhaegar's plan during this tourney was to solidify and build support for himself among the great houses of Westeros. But Aerys got word of this plot from Varys and showed up to sabotage it. Varys again, are we seeing a pattern? I think that Rhaegar was trying to work around this by having his supporters Arthur and Ashara, his wife's close brother Oberyn, and Jon Connington, all shown here dancing, secretly do diplomacy in plain sight, with Ashara as a go-between. Ned and Brandon just happened to crash the party because she was smoking hot. Again, Rhaegar's cause is fulfilling the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy, and in addition to Ashara being a true believer, I think he convinced Lyanna to join this cause earlier that same paragraph.
The Dragon Prince sang a song so sad it made the wolf maids sniffle.
So, Ned joined the conspiracy because of Lyanna's promises, and Ashara was already in lockstep with her brother Arthur to try to salvage Rhaegar's work. They rescued Dany and Viserys, and Ashara stays because she needed a new start and was committed to protect the 3 Targaryen children in order to save the realm. Ashara's travels. Ashara's role in the conspiracy was initially as wet nurse and mother figure, but it may have eventually morphed into her current role as Septa Lemore on The Shy Maid. However, instead of discussing how she got there, now I would like to step back and map her interesting journey from the tourney at Harrenhal back to Starfall and giving birth. Most of this will be conjecture, but it's my way of piecing together Ashara's contributions during Robert's Rebellion. We return to the rumors about Ashara and Ned at Harrenhal. Here is Harwin discussing them with Arya after her discussion with Ned Dayne.
I doubt there's any truth to it. But if there is, what of it? When Ned met this Dornish lady, his brother Brandon was still alive, and it was him betrothed to Lady Catelyn. So there's no stain on your father's honor. There's naught like a tourney to make the blood run hot. So maybe some words were whispered in a tent of night. Who can say? Words or kisses, maybe more. But where's the harm in that?
Note that Brandon comes into it again, and Ned is not the subject of any of those phrases. Those were all in the third person, so it could have been Brandon that was speaking those words, not Ned. It does seem like Brandon is cock-blocking Ned in every one of these quotes. And that is exactly what I think happened. Her blood ran hot, but for Brandon, not Ned. Sir Barristan, in his Kingbreaker chapter, later says a man dishonored her at Harrenhal, as he wishes,
might she have looked to me instead of Stark?
To me, this closes the book that Brandon was the one with her at Harrenhal, because Sir Barristan likes Ned, but he definitely wouldn't like the man who had dishonored his Ashara. This 80s movie comic book Ashara that he's created in his head. That's, of course, Barristan's opinion here that she was dishonored. I doubt Ashara would agree to the characterization. Ashara would not have wanted to be with Barristan and his traditional knightly chivalry that treats her like Lois Lane. But Brandon had a way with the ladies, and I think Ashara would definitely fancy the wild wolf of Mira's tale, or the one described by Barbary Dustin for that matter.
Brandon was never shy about taking what he wanted. I am old now, a dried up thing, too long a widow, but I still remember the look of my maiden's blood on his cock the night he claimed me. I think Brandon liked the sight as well. A bloody sword is a beautiful thing, yes. It hurt, but it was a sweet pain.
Yes, Brandon's not shy about taking what he wanted, and clearly Ashara was the most desirable woman at that tourney. I think Brandon probably charmed the pants off of her. There is no more text linking Brandon to Ashara, but we can speculate as to when they might have next met. I think Ashara returned to King's Landing with Aelia and was there for Aegon's birth. I like to imagine that in the vision Dany has of that event in the House of the Undying, Rhaegar is actually talking to Ashara, and it is her memory that formed the vision. She would, of course, have been to Essos, and her memories could have gone into the anti-Weirwoods, as it were.
"He has a song," the man replied. "He is the prince that was promised, and his is the song of ice and fire." He looked up when he said it, and his eyes met Dany's, and it seemed as if he saw her standing there beyond the door. "There must be one more," he said, though whether he was speaking to her or the woman in the bed, she could not say. "The dragon has 3 heads.
Here, Rhaegar is forming the plan to meet up with Lyanna. Ashara may have had a hand in that plan, actually, but that is speculative. I believe that Lyanna was a fully willing participant in their elopement, by the way. Once Rhaegar had Lyanna, Ashara would have returned from the inn at the crossroads to Elia in King's Landing. After Brandon hears of Lyanna's disappearance, also at the inn of the crossroads, from Littlefinger, who was on his way back to the Fingers, and probably witnessed the event, the Wild Wolf storms into King's Landing and is arrested by the Mad King for his belligerence. I would guess that Ashara visited him in a tower cell during the time he was held before his execution. That is when I assume her child with Brandon was conceived, knowing that his life was forfeit. What happens next is wholly my conjecture, and not necessary to the Tower of Joy conspiracy theory, but I do love this idea. I think Brandon had asked Ashara to send a message to Ned when he was arrested, to not under any circumstances come to King's Landing. I think that Ashara made it through to Gulltown before the battle, and came to Ned in the Eyrie to deliver the message, learning too late that Brandon had been executed in her absence. They of course comforted each other in their grief, and perhaps some feelings from Harrenhal were rekindled, but Ashara was already with child, and Ned knew they could not marry because he needed the Tully alliance. He had to marry Catelyn, and that abridged their reunion. It probably also caused a rift between them, given her commitment to Rhaegar's cause. That said, Gulltown, a war zone, was now closed to her, so Ned took her north with him. On their way to White Harbor, they stopped over in the Sisters, making Ashara the fisherman's daughter. Her being the fisherman's daughter is another idea from the Order of the Green Hand. I like this idea, it's fun, and it fits, although it isn't required to be true for my overall conspiracy theory to be true. I also disagree with their assertion that Ned and Ashara were there together as lovers and married, which is why I think she was sending messages for Brandon instead. Under my theory, Ned wasn't the one who planted a baby in her belly, because it was already there.
At the dawn of Robert's rebellion, the Mad King had sent the Eyrie for Stark's head, but Jon Arryn sent him back defiance. Gulltown stayed loyal to the throne. To get home and call his banners, Stark had to cross the mountains to the Fingers, and find a fisherman to carry him across the Bight. A storm caught them on the way. The fisherman drowned, but his daughter got Stark to the Sisters before the boat went down. They say he left her with a bag of silver and a bastard in her belly. Jon Snow, she named him, after Arryn.
Clearly, a lot of this was made up by Godric Burrell, including her identity. I also don't believe he just abandoned her. In any case, she would then and only then finally return to Starfall, on a ship, and probably from White Harbor, the stronghold of the North. She would, of course, meet Ned again 8 months later or so in Starfall. And that is Ashara Dayne's story as I see it. That is all for now. Next time, we'll discuss Illyrio and Varys' plan, and why it required the sabotage of Dany and Viserys, which moved Ashara/Lemore and Wallis/Halden to the Shy Maid. In the meantime, I'll ask you this. How did Illyrio get Dany's dragon eggs from Bravos? Let me know in the comments. Peace. Thanks to the terrific artists whose work is featured on this video. Thanks especially to those in my family who helped in this series so far.
Outside my window is a tree. If you enjoyed this content, you can also consider supporting us on Patreon.